Hi everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to make a mask with a removable nose wire and adjustable straps. If you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe, and let's get started. You're going to need 100% cotton fabric. This particular pack was purchased off of Amazon. I'm using a solid fabric for the back part of the mask. I also bought this elastic off of Amazon, which came with 50 nose wires. But I'm actually going to be using this one instead. I purchased it separately from the elastic, and it is a little thicker and more sturdy for purposes of reusing the mask. The rest are just your basic sewing tools. However, I am going to be using a pin to mark my fabric. I decided to use the pattern without any seam allowance because I wanted to use the lines as a sewing guide. Pin along the corners in the same direction. You can draw in the seam allowance, but I decided to just eyeball it. I basically have half an inch seam allowance all around and then 3/4 of an inch at the top. The top is a little wider because it's also going to be used to create the casing for the nose wire. Remember how I pinned each of the corners of the pattern in the same direction? Now I'm going to use the pins as a guide to trace out the pattern on the other half of the mask. Repeat the process to create the front layer of the mask. Sew along the center. To reinforce the fabric, I'm going to use a very small zigzag stitch. You can also use a serger instead of a zigzag stitch. Snip into the seam. To reduce bulk, press the seam towards one side. The opening for my nose wire is going to be on the right side of the mask, so I like to press the seam away from that side. In my case, I'm pressing it towards the left. I find it much faster to just use my fingers to press out the seam on both the front and the back. Pin the front to the back with right sides facing together. If I match up the pieces using the seam allowance only, my patterns are actually a little misaligned. So I'm going to adjust it just a little bit until I get the patterns to match up. Repeat on the bottom as well as each corner of the mask. Use the midpoint of the elastic to find out where it meets the corner and pin it in place in between the two layers. You can definitely mark the elastic, but because it's so thin, I'm just going to eyeball it. To demonstrate, the elastic should be sitting in between the two layers in this position. Sew along the pattern, but these are the points that you're going to want to skip. Skip over the elastic, which is essentially at every corner. Also skip at the top, which is going to be the opening for inserting the nose wire into the mask. And leave an opening somewhere along the mask so that you can turn it right side out. Skipping over the elastic allows me to move it back and forth like so. Even out the edges and snip off the corners. Take the same zigzag stitch settings from earlier and finish the rest of the raw edges. Make sure you skip the opening. For the elastic on either side of the mask, just tuck it right into the seam allowance. Try not to catch any of the elastic with the zigzag stitch. If you need to, just go in between the two layers and pull the elastic out of the way. Here, I'm also pushing the elastic towards the seam so that it doesn't get caught in the zigzag stitch. I hope you can see the elastic here, how it's sitting in between the seam allowance. Now flip the whole thing right side out. I'm actually using a seam ripper to help me pull out the corners as well as the seams. Pin everything in place. There are a few different ways that you can sew this, but make sure you leave just enough space at the top for the nose wire. Depending on the width of your wire, 1/4 of an inch should be enough. If you choose, you can also pull at the elastic while sewing. This is going to cinch up the side and give the mask a snug fit. Here, I'm using the method that will allow me to cinch up the side of the mask. I'm sewing right along the edge, right over the elastic. And then as I sew along the side, I'm pushing the elastic away from the seam so that it doesn't get caught in the stitches. Before finishing the side, I pull at the remaining end of the elastic. Doing this is going to help cinch up the side, and then I sew right over the elastic to hold it in place. Here it is with the sides all cinched up. On to the fisherman's knot. I had to look at so many guides and practice this over and over again just to make sure that I'm showing you everything correctly. Just to be safe, I do have the guide off to the side. One string is going to be on the bottom and the other one is going to be on top. Use as much string as possible because this is going to make tying the knot a lot easier. For the string that's on the bottom, you're going to tie it away from you. So here we go. Wrap it around once. This is going to make loop number 1. For the next loop, you're going to want to wrap it towards the inside or back towards the beginning of the string. Before I finish wrapping it the second time, I just wanted to show you. This is loop number 1 and this is loop number 2. Go ahead and finish wrapping the string and then take the end and insert it through loop number 2. And also through loop number 1. Take the beginning part of the string and tug at it in order to tighten the knot. As you're pulling at the string, you can also push the knot towards the end. This is going to allow you to push the knot back and forth, like so. You don't want to make the knot too tight because that's going to prevent you from pushing it back and forth along the string. Now let's repeat using the other string, but you're going to do everything in the opposite direction. So this time you're going to wrap it towards you. Here's the first loop. And wrap it again, going towards the beginning of the string. This is loop number 1 and loop number 2. Take the end of the string and push it through loop number 2. And back through loop number 1. Tug at the beginning part of the string. To make it a little easier, the string that starts on top should end on top and the string that starts on the bottom should end on the bottom. You might also notice that the knot creates a little X shape. You don't want to disrupt that X shape. So now you should have something like this. This is the bottom string and the top string. To loosen the strap, just pull both knots towards the center. And to tighten the strap, pull both knots away from the center. Snip off the extra thread just to clean this up. Lastly, I wanted to show you how to use the nose wire. If you skipped a few stitches earlier, you should have an opening at the top like this. Take the nose wire and insert it through that little opening. You might have to wiggle it a little bit at the center point just because there are a few different layers there, but it shouldn't take that much wiggling to push it through. To remove it, simply push it back out through the opening, and when you want to use the nose wire, push it back through, bend it as you see fit, and there you have it. A face mask with a removable nose wire and adjustable straps. I like that the nose wire prevents my glasses from fogging up and I can also remove it when I need to wash the mask. I did find that cinching the sides and making the mask very snug makes it a little harder to breathe, but I think this will be useful for those of you who prefer to have that snug fit. Thank you so much for watching as always. I hope you learned something useful from this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. I will see you in the next video. Bye!